Bienvenidos, bienvenidas a esta conferencia magistral del profesor Yorizumi Watanabe. Vamos a ver en este minuto un aviso de protección civil, por favor.
El CISAN te da la bienvenida. Antes de comenzar, queremos compartir contigo información que debes tomar en cuenta en caso de un sismo. 1. Conservar la calma. Recuerda que desde este piso no debes intentar evacuar el edificio cuando suene la alerta sísmica. 2. Dirígete a las zonas de seguridad marcadas con esta señal. Se encuentran en los pilares, traves y muros de carga sin cristales. Durante el sismo debes permanecer en estas zonas seguras. 3. Espera indicaciones del personal de seguridad capacitado. Una vez finalizado el sismo, desalojaremos la torre por las escaleras, nunca por los elevadores. 4. Durante el descenso, recuerda, no corro, no grito, no empujo. Estás en un edificio seguro. Gracias por tu visita y tu atención.
Bueno, pues con gran honor y gran placer presento a ustedes al profesor Yorizumi Watanabe, quien es profesor de Economía Política Internacional y decano de la Escuela Internacional de Comunicación de la Universidad Kansai de Estudios Internacionales desde abril de 2019 y es profesor emérito en la Universidad Kelo, en la cual enseñó desde abril de 2005 hasta marzo de 2019. Su distinguida carrera ha mostrado un gran compromiso con las relaciones bilaterales y las relaciones multilaterales de comercio en las que Japón se ha visto envuelto en las últimas 2 décadas. Esto incluye misiones en Génova de 1985 a 1990 y en Bruselas de 1995 a 1998. El profesor nos comentó también que él estuvo viniendo a México cuando se celebraron las negociaciones de los tratados entre México y Japón. Fue director general del Ministerio de Asuntos Económicos de Relaciones Exteriores de Japón de 2002 a 2004 y ha servido como jefe negociador para las relaciones México-Japón en el Economic Partnership Agreement y en el Working Party de la accesión de Rusia en el WTO. También ha sido asistente al ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Japón en 2004. También para la Unión Europea, para los tratados entre Japón e India y más recientemente entre los tratados Estados Unidos-Japón, en las relaciones económicas, otra vez con el Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores en 2016. Actualmente, el profesor Watanabe está trabajando en el panel de los asuntos relacionados con el Brexit que organiza la Federación Japonesa de Organizaciones Económicas. Profesor Watanabe, bienvenido.
Muchísimas gracias. Well, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Claudia Maya, the director of this Center for the North American Studies Center here at this university, and also the respective professors like Dr. Juan Carlos Barron Pastol, and also Doctora Gracia Martínez Zarche Sánchez, también Vania de la Vega Shiota Sensei aquí. Muchísimas gracias para su invitación. My Spanish is very much limited, so allow me to speak in English, which could be even more easier for me and maybe more comfortable for me. So allow me to, from now on, speak in English. Okay. I'd like to use the. Oh, I see. So there is no pin mic here. So okay, let me. Excuse me, just for a moment. Okay, right. So today I'm going to talk about this Japan's trade strategy in troubled world market. And I'm sure that without saying, you know what I mean by that, because we have very colorful president in the neighbor country. So both Japan and Mexico and some other neighbor like Canada, we have all the same problem. And today I would like to deal with particularly the economic matters, more focus on maybe international trade. And as a matter of introduction, I'd like to show you the today's content. I'd like to talk about some introductory things. Then that will be followed by Japan's FTA policy that I was being engaged, and also the Trans-Pacific Partnership, in Japan and Mexico bilateral relations that will be followed, and how does Japan cope with this kind of new trend. And that brings me to the conclusion of the today's talk. My talk will be lasting for about 1 hour. I hope that you are not bored too much. Let me try my best. Okay, so as a matter of introduction, I should like to just share with you two major sources of uncertainties. And one is the Brexit, and this is a front page of the Financial Times of the 25th June 2016, so 3 years ago. And the other thing is Trump shock. This is also taking place the 2016, 2017, because the presidential election in the United States was held in 2016. And those two sources of concerns actually generated in the same year of 2016. And Japan has been quite adversely affected by those two things. And last week I was in United Kingdom, and to talk about future of Japan-UK, United Kingdom relations, with some anticipation that the United Kingdom might leave with or without agreement with the European Union. So we have the very serious problem, particularly Japanese companies have a very serious problem there. Let me go quickly to the some other aspects of this Trump shock. Trump puts protectionism at the heart of U.S. economic policy. It says executive order signed to withdraw from the TPP. That was the major thing. And late John McCain said that that was a wrong sort of decision on the part of President Trump. It will create, John McCain said, it will create an opening for China to rewrite the economic rules at the expense of American workers. And it will send a troubling signal of American disengagement in the Asia-Pacific region at the time that means the United States, least afforded. So I can help but share this sentiment and understanding that has been expressed by late veteran Senator Mr. John McCain. And as you know, the NAFTA remaking that has been ended up with what you call USMCA, United States Mexico-Canada Agreement. And I would like to come back on that later on. But from my perspective, being an expert on WTO and trade theories, NAFTA of 1994 was the real, genuine free trade agreement. But the USMCA is not necessarily a free trade agreement, as its name shows. The the wording F3 has been missing. So USMCA, Mexico, Canada. I'm very glad that Mexico comes before Canada, because it follows the sequence of the agreement with the United States. So United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, but there's no free in that agreement. It's not a free trade agreement, it's rather managed trade agreement. Mr. Trump has also very severe sort of positioning vis-a-vis European Union. He doesn't like that kind of economic integration of the kind of European Union. So he has been rather harsh all the time with European leaders, particularly to Germany, particularly to Madame Merkel, the Bundeskanzler of Germany, and as his assistant on trade, Peter Navarro, he said that, Peter Navarro said, Germany is grossly undervalue euro and Germany exploit the US and EU partnership. So he has been expressing some negative comments on that. And also TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, has been declared dead. So I think President Trump's attitude towards international trade is very clear. It's America centricism, and it's America first. And of course, another element is bilateralism prevails over multilateralism. So Mr. Trump opts for bilateral trade deals. Bilateral deal does not mean necessarily free trade agreement, as has been shown by the case of what we call NAFTA version 2, which is not necessarily free trade agreement. It's a bilateral agreement. It's a trilateral agreement, but not really the free trade agreement. Bilateral deals that Mr. Trump has been looking at, seeking for, those are based on his understanding that trade surplus is a wrong thing, particularly trade surplus in the bilateral relations is no good to United States interests. So he targeted not only China, but also Mexico, Japan, all these countries who run the trade surplus with United States as a kind of antagonist, trade antagonist. So he has to change the situation for better for the United States. So his deals, what he called deals, could imply balancing trade account via political interventions or political pressure by US government, setting up numerical targets of auto imports by Japan or by Mexico, by Canada, as it is the case in the USMCA, until reciprocity in terms of balanced trade account will be achieved. And that reminds us of procedural protectionism of 1980s. Japan has been suffering. Japan has been suffering in the 1980s, maybe the first half of the 1990s, the procedural protectionism displayed, demonstrated by United States. This is a kind of recurrent sort of tendency of United States to make a recourse to protectionism using American trade legislation, such as 1964 Trade Expansion Act or the 1974 U.S. Trade Agreement, U.S. Trade Act, in which they have Section 301 or Super Section 301 in the later version of U.S. trade laws. It has been formulated as a kind of legal actions on the part of the United States. But the problem is all these legal actions are very unilaterally placed. You see, it's not in accordance with bilateral agreement or trilateral agreement, not at all based on multilateral agreement. So that's the real problem for us. Let me explain to you why Brexit, the exodus or the, how do I say, the exit of Great Britain from European Union matters to Japanese economy or Japanese companies. This is indicated that all those production points, production sites of Japanese companies like Toyota, Sony, Nissan, Canon, and Mitsubishi, heavy industries or electric industries, automotives, all kinds of manufacturing section have been deeply engaged in the United Kingdom since mid of 1980s. Why Japanese investment started channeling into UK? That was largely to avoid the trade frictions between Japan and European communities. Japan has been running a number of political sort of difficulties in terms of trade frictions, what we used to call, because you see, with the United States and with European Union, Japan's major exports was automobiles, passenger vehicles, and Japan massively having the trade surplus with either with the United States or with European Union. So we have very severe trade frictions up until maybe the first half of the 1990s. So now we have trade frictions between United States and China, or trade frictions between the United States and China, and also the China and other countries. But up until the first half of the 1990s, Japan was one of the epicenter of trade confrontations because of huge trade surplus with either with the United States or with European Union. So in order to mitigate this kind of trade frictions, Japanese companies decided to move on to United Kingdom. Particularly, that was helped by Madame Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister. Then she invited Japanese investment to come and settle down in the UK, so that those productions, I mean the cars made in UK by Japanese investors like Toyota, Nissan, or Japanese heavy industries, or Japanese electronics or electric appliances companies, they settle down in the United Kingdom. They could afford duty zero entry of their products into the continental European countries of 27 member countries of European Union. So that was a major sort of motivation to mitigate these EU-Japan trade frictions, and also they can avoid the duty imposition by European community of sometimes 10% on the passenger cars and 14 or 15% for electric appliances. So you see, there was a major motivation for Japanese companies listed here to get into UK. And there are more than 1,300 Japanese companies now operating in this manner, including financial houses like Nomura Holdings, and also some Japanese companies taking advantage of the city center of London, you know, the city of the United Kingdom. So what will happen if UK fails to keep free market access to the EU single market? That means what will happen if UK gets out from the European Union without any deal? And that is the very serious matter for Japanese economy. The first, UK should resume a full membership of the WTO. Why? Because UK's trade policy has been always replaced by trade policy of European Union in its totality. So that means since the European Union is a common market, therefore the trade policy of UK has been represented by the trade policy of European Union. So UK joined European Economic Community back in 1973. So over 45 years, UK has never exercised this, the trade policy initiatives. So you see, as a matter of fact, there is a kind of human resource problem as well within United Kingdom UK government, because the trade policy has been delegated to European Commission officials. So the UK officials have been only sort of, auxiliary sort of functions only. So now all of a sudden, if UK, exits from European Union, they have to manage themselves, you see. So it is a very difficult thing to do. And those British products become subject to the MFN duties imposed by European Union if there is no agreement dealing with exit of UK from European Union. UK should establish its own national tariff schedule because you see, Mexico is a member to WTO. I remember 1986, Mexico joined the GATT, El Acuerdo General, the GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. I was in Geneva. So, the Japanese delegation congratulated Mexico's entry to the GATT. It was in 1986. So once Mexico joined the GATT, and it's a member to WTO as well, they have their own tariff schedules, you see. And since UK is going to UK is going to exit from European Union, that means that they would be no longer covered by common external tariff of the European Union. Instead, they have to establish their own national schedules. Actually, United Kingdom already submitted their provisional tariff schedules, which is fairly ambitious sort of package because 87% of tariff lines, there are about 10,000 tariff lines. So 87% of those tariff lines have been put down to zero duty, and only the rest, they will have some duties. So obviously, UK try to keep sort of free trade stance, but this is only provisional, and it has not been yet, fully submitted to WTO. So they have to go through this kind of formal procedures in order to become a full-fledged member in the WTO. I talked about this trade tariff lines, but this is only for the trading goods. The trade in services, we have the GATT, General Agreement on Trade in Services, just like GATT for trading goods. The UK should negotiate its own service commitment. And also the government procurement, the government procurement is the agreement within WTO to which EU as such is a signatory to that agreement. But now UK exits from EU, therefore they have to establish their own entity list to be covered by government procurement agreement of the WTO. So all these things, it's an enormous workload for United Kingdom government. So it's really the problem. And Mr. Johnson, Boris Johnson, is now UK Prime Minister, and he said, with or without any deal, he is determined to bring United Kingdom out of European Union as of August 31st. As you know, the British Parliament has been closed until 14th October. So the talks, discussion to be held in the UK Parliament would be very much limited. And on the 17th and 18th of October, there will be a European summit to which Mr. Johnson also goes and participate in that. So there'd be very, little time left. So maybe we don't know if there is any sort of dramatic sort of development to be seen, we would be faced with no deal Brexit of United Kingdom from European Union. And those are really the issue for everybody, including Japanese companies who have been represented there in European Union member countries. And as you see, roughly 1,000 companies located in the UK, and they have to decide what to do for the forthcoming investment. So that's the Brexit, you see. So Brexit, Trump's trade policy, those are two major concerns that has been really, giving very heavy sort of very heavy weight to the decision of Japanese companies. Right, so Japan's FTA EPA policy and the subsequent TPP issues. First, I would like to touch upon how we come up to this trade policy based on the economic partnership agreement. This is a very sketchy summary of Japan's car industries making optimal supply system in East Asia after the Plaza Accord. Plaza Accord is very important sort of turning point here, the Plaza Accord. Plaza Accord was the first exchange rate realignment after Smithsonian Agreement back in 1973. And this Plaza Accord was done in September 1985. And at that time, as I said, you see there was a very sort of surmounting Japanese trade surplus with European Union or with the United States. So that made Japan a very difficult situation in terms of trade relations with those advanced economies. And one of the accusations that Japan had to deal with was the devaluation of or undervalued Japanese yen. So just like nowadays we talk about Chinese renminbi has been undervalued, therefore it gives additional export ability to China. We had the same sort of discussions in the 1980s, the first half of 1980s, and it was in September 1985 at Hotel Plaza, New York. There was the G5 meeting. G5 was the leading nations, central bankers, and financial ministers get together. And at that G5 meeting in the Plaza Hotel, September 22nd, 1985, they agreed to revalue, appreciate Japanese yen. It used to be like 160 yen, 260 yen to $1. But following this Plaza Accord, it came down to 185 yen to $1 US. So roughly 25% of appreciation of Japanese yen. So in order to cope with this devaluation of Japanese yen, Japanese companies started their investment abroad, particularly to those countries like, you see, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia. Those are the member countries of ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So Japanese companies started their local production of parts and components of Japanese cars, and they gradually established what we call now the production network. And production network without any formal trade deals or trade agreements. That's why I would call that de facto business-driven integration. De facto business-driven integration induced by foreign direct investment from Japan to those countries in ASEAN. Why those ASEAN countries? Because they already reached certain level of development, and also their national currencies like Malaysian ringgit, Thai bahts, Indonesian currencies, rupiah, they have been all pegged to US dollars. So in this way, Japanese FDI companies, they could avoid the ramifications of up and downs of Japanese yen to US dollar exchange rate. You see, in order to avoid any misgivings of exchange rate fluctuations, they have chosen this place. So the production started with diesel engine, air conditioning in Thailand, some engine parts and condensers in Malaysia and Philippines and Indonesia respectively. And those parts and components moved crossing the border of those countries. And Thailand became one of the major sort of centers of production of cars. And Thailand wanted to become second Detroit in Asia. So the Thailand also played a major role. But at the same time, I have to tell you that ASEAN had its own sequence of free trade agreements. And ASEAN FTA, ASEAN's own FTA has been also in progress. So Japanese companies take advantage of making of ASEAN FTA. And there is one important thing is that if value content goes above 40% of one particular product, then they can get into another member country of ASEAN. So if the engine parts made in Malaysia and if it goes beyond 40% of value content, then it will enjoy the duty-free entry to Thailand or to the Philippines or Indonesia in accordance with ASEAN free trade arrangement. So in this way, you see there's a kind of consonant movement between Japan's FDI and the making of ASEAN free trade agreement. And Japan still provides the high value added engine parts and components from Japan to those countries. So then, slowly but steadily, they established this what we call the production networking that resulted in the value chain of those companies. So next slide is just a summary of this market integration in Asia Pacific or East Asia, if you like. The Plaza Accord was a major sort of turning point. And that was an ignition key, if you like. And de facto business-driven integration through foreign direct investment, establishing supply chain and production network in that region. And FTA, EPA to cover that practice of de facto business-driven integration. And little by little, it was the beginning of this century, 21st century, 2001, 2002, that Japan started our FTA, EPA policies, first to, the bilateral EPAs with East Asian countries, particularly those ASEAN countries. And actually, the one with Mexico was also very important. That was the second EPA, only after Japan's EPA with Singapore. So you see the wider regional FTAs, meaning that ASEAN plus Japan, ASEAN plus China, ASEAN plus Korea, all together we have 5 different sets of ASEAN plus 1 type of FTA, and that go beyond the ASEAN plus 3. By 3, we mean Japan, China, Korea. ASEAN plus Japan, China, Korea, that was a format developed by China. ASEAN plus 6, that's in addition to Japan, China, Korea. Japan's proposal adding 3 more countries like Australia, New Zealand, and India. So that makes ASEAN plus 6, which is now what we call RCEP. RCEP, I would like to come back, but RCEP is East Asia Free Trade agreement. And most probably towards the end of this year, we would have agreement in principle by 16 countries, because there are 10 countries in ASEAN, plus JCK, Japan, China, Korea, plus we have Australia, New Zealand, and India. So altogether 16 countries. And we have also Japan, China, Korea trilateral EPA as well. So those are the kind of plurilateral or multilateral FTAs, EPAs beyond bilateral EPAs. We go even beyond regional FTAs. That's TPP is one example, Trans-Pacific Partnership, as an inter-regional FTA across Asia and Pacific. As you know, that was January 2017, right after inauguration of President Mr. Trump. In January, that was 23rd, to be exact, in 2017, he put a signature on the presidential decree to withdraw from TPP membership. So that was a quite risky sort of situation in 2017, but Japan took initiative to keep what we have agreed in the TPP 12 to be alive, and even after the U.S. Withdrawal or U.S. departure from the TPP, Japan kept this 11 countries sort of association, and finally, thanks to Mexico, thanks to other countries, CPTPP, Comprehensive and Progressive TPP, came into force December 30th, 2018, last year. So CPTPP is in place. We have bilaterals and we have regional plurilaterals and beyond regional EPAs, and we have inter-regional FTA like CPTPP as well as Japan-EU EPA. So this is the list of achievements of Japanese EPA. We are much latecomer to this club of free trade agreements. Mexico was moving much faster in terms of making of free trade agreement. This is a kind of chronology of Japan's EPA negotiations. We started with Singapore, but Singapore is a free port and very low duties. It was not so difficult, particularly very specific reason of Singapore, that Singapore has no vital interest in exporting their agriculture product to Japan. It was easy for us to start with Singapore. It was more than the kind of mental exercise, you see. But the second partner, Mexico, that was a real difficulty. I mean, because Mexico exports to Japan a lot of agricultural products, and more than 20% of Mexico's export to Japan at that time, more than 20% of Mexico's export to Japan was agriculture, and half of that was pork meat. So pork and together with beef, bovine meat, all these are very sensitive products for developed countries. So it was very tough. And I was assigned, at that time, I was assigned as Deputy Director General dealing with economic affairs in the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I was assigned to the head negotiator, chief negotiator for this Japan-Mexico EPA. It was really tough because Mexico had already, at that time, about a dozen of free trade agreements. So Mexico has much more experience. And Japan is just like a novitiate. You see, we have only easy EPA with Singapore, and all of a sudden we got Mexico to negotiate on agriculture products. So it was really a very tough negotiation for us. Actually, it took 23 months to come to an agreement. We negotiated every month since November 2002, every month, you see. And that was in October 2003. We targeted this kind of, it was a target for wrapping up our negotiation on the officials level. And we invited Mexican President, Mr. Fox, at that time, to come to Japan as a state guest of honor. We prepared also the Imperial Palace dinner with the former emperor and empress. We set up everything in a perfect situation, and we thought that maybe Mr. Fox will agree to the package of trade agreement between Japan and Mexico, but unfortunately he just said no to the deal. So actually, that was a real sort of catastrophic situation for Japan. But actually, that was in October 2003. But in March 2004, we finally reached agreement in substance, and from April 2005. As it's indicated here, this Japan-Mexico EPA came into effect. So that was very good, particularly dealing with agriculture sensitive products. And when we negotiated negotiated TPP or Japan-EU EPA, Japan-Mexico's trade deal was kind of good model for Japan-EU EPA as well as TPP agreement to deal with those sensitive agriculture products. So trade negotiators in Japan, they still, remember and try to remember what we have, how we have reached this difficult negotiation, particularly on the agricultural market access with Mexico. And then we have, you see, the Malaysia, Japan, Chile, Japan, Thailand, all these countries was ASEAN. And then we have also a country like Chile and Peru. Then we have EU, the slightly bigger letter here, Japan-EU EPA. That's also very important because Japan EU, those countries put together in GDP terms, it exceeds 30% of world GDP. It exceeds roughly 38% of world trade as well. So it's a big deal. So Japan EU EPA also came into force February this year. So we have, and also we have TPP. So altogether, Japanese external trade, maybe half of that is now covered by those preferential FTA, EPA deals. Well, what we have in the Economic Partnership Agreement, EPA, is this. Of course, market access, both trading goods and services, particularly trading goods, zero duty thing is very important. But in addition, we have government procurement, and we have also the movement of natural persons and competition policy coordination, business environment, improvement of business environment. This has been quite important, particularly for Japan-Mexico EPA. Bilateral cooperation we have, for instance, in the tourism area, the Mexico and Japan, we have bilateral cooperation in that field. When we reached this agreement back in 2004, there was only 5 million foreign tourists visiting Japan, but it's now over 38 million. And maybe it's thanks to those cooperation that was held under the frameworks such as Japan-Mexico EPA and other bilateral EPAs. And most importantly, we have investment chapter. And investment chapter is certainly the most important element other than the market access agreements. We have the MFN, most favored nation treatment, and also national treatment. Those elements in advance of establishing the companies, FDI companies in either territories. So that is really the kind of new type of investment agreement. So altogether, that consists of one economic partnership agreement. And Japan-Mexico EPA serves as a good model for the subsequent EPAs. Those are the substance of Japan's EPA with different countries, and you could take a look on that. Very comprehensive nature that you could notice on Japan's EPA. And coming into this slide, I just wanted to show you the membership of different mega FTAs, such as ASEAN FTA. We have also what China proposed, ASEAN Plus 3, and we have RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that is ASEAN Plus 6. And the importance in terms of trade, in terms of GDP, are indicated here. This slide is to give you some idea why EPA matters very much, because you see this is one of the typical examples how the supply chain or production network has been achieved. For instance, example one, Japanese automobile company based in Thailand imports engines from Japan, transmission also from Japan, assembles them in Thailand, all parts and components coming from other ASEAN countries. And those products, the final products, would be exported to Australia or New Zealand. Example 3 is about elevator. It's a heavy machinery. Japanese elevator manufacturers, that's Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, based in Thailand, imports hoists from China, manufactures elevators in Thailand, and exports them to India. So East Asia is really the making of this kind of production networking, and the FTAs, EPAs are to reinforce the making of this kind of value chains by means of eliminating duties for those parts and components crossing over into some other countries. Well, the next slide is maybe talking about the future. Japan's EPA strategy, how it will put into the context of the East Asia or Asia Pacific free trade area. As you see, we have Japan's EPA already, 15 of them already came into force in East Asia. And then we have maybe two directions to move. One is East Asia through RCEP. RCEP, just to remind you that ASEAN 10 nations plus JCK, Japan, China, Korea, plus Australia, New Zealand, and India. So we have very sort of scattered the scale of countries in terms of economic development. We have Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos. So for those countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, CLMV, if you like to put Vietnam as well, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, we have to prepare the capacity building and also technical assistance to be provided those countries so that we could achieve what we call inclusive growth through RCEP arrangements. So it's a free trade agreement, but at the same time, it's a cooperation scheme to provide particularly to those latecomers in ASEAN. And we have also TPP, and the one with Mexico, bilateral EPA with Mexico. Those are going to Pacific Rim. So two directions. One is to East Asia via RCEP, and the other is Pacific Rim via TPP and bilateral agreement with Mexico, with Chile, with Peru, and all those countries. And at the end of the day, what we are now talking about in APEC, everybody knows APEC, right? It's an Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation that started in 1989, and they talk about what they call the FTAAP. FTAAP, sorry for so many abbreviations. The FTAAP stands for Free Trade Area of Asia Pacific. Okay, so they are discussing about this free trade area of Asia Pacific. Then maybe two important components is one is RCEP, and plus maybe JCK trilateral one, and we have TPP. So all these will channel into the making of free trade area across Asia Pacific. This is to make the 21 member economies of APEC eligible for this kind of free trade arrangements. So this is the kind of future concept of free trade area across this region of Asia Pacific, where Japan and Mexico are being involved. So the TPP, no need to reiterate the importance of that. Tariff elimination, very high level, as you see, almost 100% for industrial products, also very high for agricultural products. New rules, SOEs. SOE is a catchword here, a state-owned enterprise. The state-owned enterprise to be disciplined by those regulations on non-commercial assistance by government. And maybe you'll be surprised why they talk about SOEs. We have a number of SOEs in respective member countries of TPP. Even in Singapore, Temasek, for instance, it's a state-owned enterprise with a huge financial resource. Vietnam is still a socialist country, so they have a number of very important and strong state-owned enterprise. But what is very important in discussing about SOEs within the framework of TPP is China. China has been always a hidden agenda when all the countries were engaged in the TPP negotiations. Of course, China, for the time being, it's not member. It's not even formally declared candidate country for TPP membership. But I can tell you, now China is really looking at possibility of China's eventual participation in TPP as a mean to come out from what you call this, middle income trap, middle income countries trap. You see, middle income countries, $6,000 US dollars, more or less, and they try to go beyond. And in order to make that happen, the Chinese SOEs should be modernized, should be, improved its performance. So SOEs, disciplines on SOEs are very important, even to some Chinese policy makers. And particularly now, United States out of TPP, and China and the United States are very severely confronting each other on trade issues. So they are very much keen in exploring possibility of Chinese eventual participation in SOE. So SOE is a kind of living issue, and we have to look into that. And at the same time, I think we have to encourage China to be engaged in a rule-based trade structure. We have to encourage China to streamline their old-fashioned state-owned enterprises. That is certainly very important for China, but also for the rest of the world. That is the situation. So altogether, those new rules that TPP has concluded would be a very important sort of milestones for the future of international trade, particularly for Asia-Pacific regions. Rules of origin that they have agreed upon is a quite generous one and quite, user-friendly rules. So maybe that is a point precisely United States under Trump administration didn't like about TPP, you see, because since it's quite, generous, so there are certain leeways for the Chinese products or products made in non-TPP countries come into TPP market. So maybe that's kind of preoccupations that Trump administration has been really thought about. Anyway, so those are the TPP things, and now there's a long queue for the membership. Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Taiwan, Indonesia, and even United Kingdom wants to join the TPP. So anyway, TPP, as Madam Hillary Clinton once said, that it's a golden standard for 21st century of international trade. It used to be like this. You see, in the 2014, the TPP countries covers about 36% of world trade. But at that time, United States was still in part of that. So after United States left, then TPP 11 has only 14% of world GDP. Okay. Now the U.S. withdraws from the TPP, and what will happen in the Asia-Pacific? There are a couple of things that I want to introduce. Particularly, as I said, China was a hidden agenda, and after U.S. withdrew, China would take advantage of the U.S. withdrawal from rule-making trade and investment across Asia-Pacific by imposing its own power-oriented trade policies. Aggressive use of anti-dumping measures. China is a user of anti-dumping measures, and also state subsidies, particularly in the state-owned enterprises producing steel. That's a big issue. And China, in a way, they lose incentives to enhance FTAs. RCEP and JCK and all that. But now, as I said, because of the very intensified China-US trade relations, they now are modifying this kind of attitude. And RCEP, for instance, China has been indicating their willingness to wrap up, conclude RCEP agreement in principle towards the end of this year, maybe along the line of APEC meetings. China would also accelerate Belt and Road initiatives by making full use of AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, as well as other banks like BRICS Bank or SOC, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. They have also the financial wing of SCO as well. So China, after all, those market economy principles, they could ignore or they don't take them seriously, and market economy principles are to be irreversibly pushed back and diminished, if not completely abandoned. This is a kind of preoccupation that we could all share in the aftermath of U.S. departure from the TPP. So that could consist of a major crisis for the free democracy in the region. TPP minus US, that's the CPTPP, pursued as a template for the 21st century trade rules across Asia Pacific to keep momentum, and that has been done. fortunately. So we could first maybe encourage United States to come back to the TPP. And as a part of that, Japan has been negotiating bilateral trade agreement with the United States under the name of the TAG, Trade Agreement on Goods, that we are negotiating with the United States. And it seems that Japan and the United States reached agreement on trade on goods. And when Mr. Abe meet Mr. Trump next time, maybe at the UN General Assembly towards the end of this month or early next month, there would be a signing ceremony between two heads of the government for this Japan-US bilateral trade agreement. And we consider that those bilateral agreements are paving the way towards United States eventual coming back to TPP. Well, now let me spend some time on the Japan-Mexico EPA and beyond. This is a kind of chronology that after we have these negotiations, we have negotiations, and as you see in the 2004, we have agreement on substance, which is indicated in the red color here, and April 2005 coming into effect of the agreement. And then we regularly overview the practice implementation of this agreement. And we have already in April 2012 coming into force of the amended agreement. So it's a Japan-Mexico EPA version 2 has been in place already. And this is a picture that I have taken. You see my name there. And this is one of the negotiations during the negotiation period. And this is in the building of Secretaría de Economía of Mexico. And it was very harsh and tough negotiation, particularly on the agriculture market access on our side, and also elimination of duties on steel for the Mexican side. And this is the very enjoyable moment when we had reached agreement on substance on 5th May 2004. Three ministers, our Mr. Kamei, just behind the flag, he was agriculture minister, and the lady minister, she is Kawaguchi for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI Minister Nakagawa Shoichi, who passed away already, unfortunately. This is the view of kind of televised reunion of ministers. And on the other side, there was Minister Delbes of Ministry of External Relations. And some other high-ranked officials also participated in this very memorable instance of our successful conclusion of the agreement. Now, I think Mexico looks at TPP as an opportunity to reinvigorate the NAFTA while opening up some of the preeminent markets in Asia. And rules of origin, TPP has a very generous and also very user-friendly type of rules of origin, because it's a self-declaration system. So actually, many products, the rules of origin of TPP will be used ahead of the rules of origin rules made in Japan-Mexico bilateral EPA. So more connectivity we could expect across Asia-Pacific region. And also, I have to mention that potential of Pacific Alliance. The Mexican ambassador to Tokyo, together with 3 other ambassadors coming from Pacific Alliance, namely Peru, Colombia, and Chile, they have been promoting this idea of Pacific Alliance. And Japan is increasingly prepared to go ahead with this cooperation with Pacific Alliance so that we could have more comprehensive agreement, as well as the production networking value chain across Asia and Pacific region of Latin America. This graph indicates that very constant increase of Japanese companies in Mexico up until 2015. But I have learned from our colleagues here at the Japanese Embassy in Mexico City that already as early as 2017, this number goes beyond 1,100. So when we concluded our agreement in negotiation, there was only 310. And then we have now 1,100 and more Japanese companies now engaged in the production, in a business transaction here on the soil of Mexico. And this, I'm very happy to look at because this is the product of Japan-Mexico bilateral EPA. And also, it pushed up Mexico's car production ranking. Now, already 2014, Mexico became the 7th largest producer of cars, ahead of Brazil. And it started back in 2005. It was only 11th. Then it came up to the 7th, ahead of Brazil and Spain. So I think that's also kind of positive results of what we have in the Japan-Mexico EPA. Yes, and this shows also Japanese car manufacturer overseas production, very left this United States, and that followed by China, India, Thai, Indonesia, and Mexico. Mexico, the extreme right, is 185 million of cars being produced in Mexico. Okay, because of the time constraints, I just want to quickly show you that how we deal with the United States. We have to deal with the United States because the United States has been the major market for Japan after the World War II. And we have to keep good relations because U.S. is our ally in terms of military alliance. So we have always very intensified bilateral relations. Intensified by that, I mean that we have a lot of problems at the same time, but we have to provide reasonable solutions to that. So maybe, you have the same problem. You see, to you, Mexico, United States is very important, but it's also very important for Japan. And I'd like to show you how we dealt with this country. Well, the always major problem is cars. And because of the successful sales of Japanese cars, as you see, back in 1986, very large amount of cars are being sold to United States, something like 3.6 million units of cars being exported from Japan directly to United States. But now this blue line is the direct export of Japanese cars to United States. And red dotted lines are the local production of cars within United States. So as you see, while there's a constant diminishing line of the production of, the number of exported cars, directly exported cars from Japan to the United States, but there was a constant, of course, when 2008 we had the financial crisis, Lehman Brothers financial crisis, there was a steep decline here, but then it lifted again. So we have a very strong local production within the United States. And taking advantage of NAFTA, taking advantage of Japan-Mexico bilateral EPA, Japanese companies have been successfully expanding their production within the United States. So we have about 3.7 million units of cars being produced in United States, while 1.7 million cars being exported directly to United States. So this is the thing. 1986, about 88% of cars being sold in North America was directly exported, while it came down only 25%. All the rest produced in the NAFTA countries. So we try to mitigate the trade account problems with our increased investment from Japan to United States, so that we could now provide the jobs for more than 90,000 jobs, direct employment in the car section, all together with indirect job creation that will provide about 1.5 million jobs in the United States. We have 36 research and development facilities all over in the United States, and 26 manufacturing plant in the United States. So this was a kind of element to mitigate the political difficulties of trade frictions based on imbalances of trade account. We also, little by little, increased the purchase or procurement of US-made parts and components. So I think, even Mr. Trump cannot ignore this kind of fact. But sometimes he ignores the fact, and he said something else. So this is rather tricky. But Japanese car companies in the United States exporting their cars from the United States. In this way, it also contributes to the U.S. overall trade account as well. So concluding remarks from Japanese perspectives, TPP 12, the original TPP, as a template for 21st century type trade agreements. So we continuously encourage United States to come back. TPP 11, to keep momentum for freer trade in Asia Pacific. That came into force already towards the end of last year. RCEP, JCK, for updating the production network in East Asia. Japan-EU EPA, the major interregional mega FTA that covers 30% of world GDP, connecting East Asia and EU via Japan. Actually, Japan-EU EPA could provide European Union with a kind of platform where EU companies can get the foothold to expand their business activities in East Asia. Japan-Mercosur, that we are now contemplating. So far, no concrete policy proposals made, but Japan-Mercosur EPA would be next generation EPA. Because as you look at this South American continent, the Pacific side, all of them, well, with the exception of a few countries like Ecuador and Colombia, fortunately, those Latin American countries on the Pacific side, they are integrated into East Asia through, say, TPP or bilateral EPAs or even APEC. But those Latin American countries on the Atlantic side, like Brazil, Argentina, those countries are sort of left behind. So the Mercosur would be a kind of next destination for Japan's EPA policy. And all these to keep trade multilateralism embodied in the WTO, and thus to maintain predictability in the international business. And multilateralizing regionalism, this is a kind of concept that I want to ask you to examine, to think about. Those FTAs, EPAs are actually regional initiatives, but those regional initiatives, when it really spread in the very wider regions, like in the case of TPP, like in the case of EU-Japan, maybe Japan Mercosur, Japan Alianza, maybe convergence of liberalization efforts could be possible with a view to enhancing the reinforcement of WTO. So new momentum to reinforce trade multilateralism embodied in the WTO, the rulemaking in the digital trade, cooperation in the WTO reform, all those things that Japan and Mexico can be very enthusiastically involved. Japan and Mexico should demonstrate leadership in TPP 11. I noticed that USMCA is a kind of platform that Mexico and Canada together can encourage United States to look at the virtues and merits of TPP 12. In a way, in USMCA, there are a number of provisions that you picked up from TPP, original TPP to USMCA. So I think Japan and Mexico, we have ample opportunities to work together. And this is the final sort of slide. You see that we have three mega regions like EU. We have Americas like NAFTA, CAFTA, Mercosur. We have East Asia represented by RCEP. We have bilateral, interregional frameworks like APEC, in the case of East Asia and Pacific side of Americas. We have also ASEM between Asia, East Asia, and Europe. So now we have TPP for Asia Pacific. We have Japan EU for the EU Asia. So all these mega FTAs, interregional frameworks could bring back their results of successful negotiations back to WTO, you see. Because WTO is now ailing, is now suffering from the lack of multilateral agreements. But if we have TPP, we have Japan EU, we have RCEP, we have more and more, the interregional agreements. Why not? All these agreements that we have reached, we could eventually bring back to WTO together with our friends from other regions like Africa, and we can reinforce their multilateral institutions such as WTO. And this center is studying North America, but also you are looking at Asia and you are looking at Africa. So I think this institution is really ideal kind of institution to look into this kind of possibility of reinforcing multilateral setting for the future of international community. So with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you very much indeed for your invitation and for your patience. Let me stop here. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Professor Watanabe. Muchas gracias al profesor Watanabe. Y ahora tenemos a dos de nuestros investigadores comentaristas Primero le voy a ceder la palabra a la doctora Claudia Maya, quien es doctora en Economía por la UNAM, maestra en Economía por la Universidad de Missouri, Kansas City, y maestra en Finanzas por la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración de la UNAM. Asimismo, es autora de diversos artículos y capítulos en libros en México y el extranjero. Además, ha participado en distintos coloquios y seminarios nacionales e internacionales. Es miembro de la red North American Research Initiative con American University en Washington y actualmente se desempeña como investigadora del CISAN y profesora de licenciatura y posgrado en la Facultad de Ciencias Políticas y Sociales. Sus líneas de investigación se orientan hacia el estudio de la economía internacional, en particular los cambios en el sistema financiero de América del Norte, financiarización, crisis económicas, moneda y banca, política económica y economía financiera. Entre sus publicaciones más recientes destacan Dólar versus Yuan, Competencia por la hegemonía financiera global, y otro artículo, Crédito, naturaleza, alcances y limitaciones, una perspectiva teórica heterodoxa. Doctora Maya, tiene usted 10 minutos, por favor, para su comentario.
Muchísimas gracias. Agradezco al doctor Watanabe por aceptar la invitación de estar esta mañana con nosotros, al Centro de Investigaciones sobre América del Norte, que haya facilitado todo lo necesario para llevar a cabo esta conferencia, al PUEA también, porque se llevó en conjunto. Y bueno, pues ya entrando en materia, quiero también agradecer a la agregada cultural de Japón que nos acompaña esta mañana. Bueno, ¿cuáles son mis comentarios en relación a esta interesante ponencia que hemos escuchado por parte del doctor Watanabe? En primer lugar, tenemos que aprender algo, la previsión, algo que Japón está haciendo para enfrentar este proteccionismo que se levanta por las políticas de Trump y enfrentar esta competencia tan agresiva por parte de China es precisamente el prever, el planear, el establecer líneas estratégicas de comercio para avanzar hacia los objetivos. Y eso es, creo que, un punto muy importante que podemos aprender de esta conversación. Sin embargo, también podemos entender otras cosas, ¿no? Tenemos que entender que Japón se erige como potencia mundial gracias a la presencia de la globalización y al avance de la globalización, no solamente de comercio, sino también de bienes, servicios y de capitales. Ir avanzando a establecer zonas que, aunque de jure no estarían unificadas, de facto lo están haciendo. Y esta es la zona del ASEAN, la zona, distintas zonas de tratados comerciales con las cuales ha establecido, y eso le ha ayudado a llevar a cabo sus estrategias de comercio. Hay que entender que las más afectadas, las empresas japonesas han sido muy afectadas con este levantamiento de proteccionismo, y el hecho de que el Brexit les haga temblar, digámoslo, y buscar nuevas alternativas de mercados, pues es una barrera, digámoslo, a seguir teniendo acceso al mercado europeo, y tienen que voltear hacia otras zonas. Esas zonas no exime a México, que podría ser la entrada para el comercio con América Latina. Hay que entender que el tipo de comercio, de tratados de libre comercio que Japón tiene en mente, va más allá de comercios o arreglos comerciales. Tiene en mente una liberalización completa en estos tratados. Como pudimos observar, es una liberalización también de la fuerza de trabajo, de las inversiones, de algunos reglamentos en cómo tratar con los gobiernos, ¿no? Es una liberalización profunda lo que implica estos acuerdos
comerciales, particularmente el EPA, o sea, la forma en cómo está concebida esta estrategia de acuerdos un tanto bilaterales, para ir enfrentando nuevamente, como les digo, posibles límites al comercio internacional. También quiero resaltar otro punto que fue importante, fue el hecho de cómo enfrentar los avances de China. Cómo tenemos que entender el comercio internacional en función de grandes empresas transnacionales, grandes corporaciones nacionales. Cómo se enfrentan entre ellas, ¿no? Cómo enfrentar a las corporaciones chinas, cómo enfrentar a los bancos chinos en una misma región. Es muy interesante que perteneciendo a la misma región de Asia, cómo sin necesidad de una confrontación con China pudieran pues trabajar, pero a la vez enfrentar esa competencia. Y por otro lado, el otro frente que Japón también tiene que cuidar, pues es la competencia estadounidense. Entonces, en términos de zonas, pues les toca voltear a América Latina cuando en Europa está el Brexit, en Norteamérica está el levantamiento de barreras comerciales, en Asia está la presencia de China, pues un tratado comercial con América Latina sería favorable para las empresas japonesas en este sentido. ¿Y cómo recibiría México un tratado comercial con Japón? Como hemos visto, no tenemos tantos años de ser socios comerciales, del 2005 a la fecha, curiosamente ya con mucho más integrados la economía mexicana a la economía estadounidense y de cierta forma afectada por las decisiones que se tomen de comercio en Estados Unidos. Bueno, es así como cómo enfrenta México un tratado comercial con Japón. Afortunadamente, dentro del nuevo UNSCA no hay ninguna cláusula que limite a México tener un tratado comercial con Japón, como sí lo hay para tener un tratado comercial con China. Creo que es una oportunidad que México pudiera aprovechar. Sin embargo, mientras México no tenga desarrollado una industria nacional, no podríamos entrar por completo y aprovechar todas las ventajas que un tratado comercial con Japón pudiera otorgar. El hecho de que solamente podamos negociar con productos agropecuarios y algunos productos que se elaboren aquí para ensamblar carros de las empresas japonesas, nos limita mucho en aprovechar un tratado de libre comercio con Japón, así como con el resto del mundo. Yo dejaría ahí mis comentarios. Agradezco nuevamente al doctor Watanabe su presencia en el CISAN y que nos haya mostrado esta estrategia de Japón a largo plazo, que podamos aprender de esto. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora Maya. Y ahora presento a ustedes a nuestro segundo comentarista, quien es el doctor Juan Carlos Barrón Pastor, investigador adscrito al área de estudios estratégicos y secretario académico del CISAN. Además, es profesor de asignatura definitivo en la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración de esta misma universidad. Es doctor en Filosofía del Desarrollo Internacional y maestro en Investigación en Estudios de Desarrollo, línea de investigación sobre educación por la Universidad de East Anglia en Reino Unido. Egresado del Seminario de Teoría Crítica del Colegio Birkbeck de la Universidad de Londres, Reino Unido, y diplomado en Relaciones Internacionales en América del Norte del CISAN. Diplomado en Teoría de Investigación Feminista en el CEICH y licenciado en Administración de la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración. Forma parte de la mesa directiva del Comité de Investigación sobre Sociocibernética de la Asociación Internacional de Sociología y su proyecto de investigación en el CISAN se titula Medios masivos de comunicación en América del Norte, México en el imaginario social estadounidense y canadiense. Su publicación más reciente es el libro Sociocibernética Crítica, que ustedes pueden adquirir aquí en el piso 9. cuando se reedite, porque ha tenido tanto éxito que está agotado. Y ahora le cedo la palabra al doctor Barrón.
Muchas gracias, doctor Watanabe, por su presentación y por su presencia aquí en el CISAN. Muchas gracias. También por las reflexiones importantes que nos trae. Muchas gracias a los estudiantes que nos acompañan hoy. Es un gusto poder recibir aquí en el CISAN. Les agradezco que hayan venido. Yo quisiera hacer algunos comentarios puntualizando algunas cuestiones que ya han sido mencionadas hoy, pero que espero poder llegar un poquito más a fondo sin tardarme mucho. Vamos a ver. Sí. La primera cosa, pues bueno, es entender, que veamos cómo lo primero para poder definir un problema como este es definir el contexto internacional. Y en este caso, el contexto internacional, pues se nos mostró a través del Brexit y también del debilitamiento de las relaciones entre Japón y Estados Unidos. Esta es una preocupación creciente que va poniendo tensión en un país que pues ha sido amigo de México por muchísimos años y que pues nos pone ante una situación similar. ¿Por qué? Porque el gobierno de Trump ha buscado golpear a sus aliados y pues bueno, a veces nos toca a nosotros y a veces le toca a Japón, pero resulta que eso está provocando un incremento de la vulnerabilidad de ambos países. En el caso de Japón, como ya se mencionó aquí, la vulnerabilidad frente a China y Corea del Norte. Sin embargo, Japón es muy importante, como ya se dijo aquí también, para México y también para Canadá. Entonces, América del Norte es una alianza con Japón que va mucho más allá de su alianza con Estados Unidos. Hay múltiples ejemplos, como aquí se mostró y se ha mostrado. El más común es el relacionado con la cadena de valores de la industria automotriz y pues las más de 1,000 compañías japonesas que hay en México, más de 100 compañías canadienses en Canadá. Y bueno, pues entre ellas, por supuesto, resaltan las de automóviles, ¿no? Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi, Suzuki, Honda, Mazda. También, pues bueno, otras empresas de electrónicos como Sony, Canon, Hitachi y Toshiba, que también ya se mencionaron aquí. Yo quisiera hacer énfasis en algo que hemos venido hablando en el curso de negocios internacionales y es sobre la importancia de entender la geopolítica contemporánea en dos vías. La primera es la vía de los estados-nación, los gobiernos, y la otra es la vía de las corporaciones. Ambas vías caminaron juntas durante buena parte del periodo liberal, pero desde 2016 parecen estarse distanciando. Y eso, pues, es lo que está generando las tensiones de nuestro tiempo. Para que tengan ustedes una idea de cómo está la cuestión, hace algunos años en México dimos el salto a la televisión digital. Y pues México sometió a competencia a todos los productores de televisión digital para abandonar la televisión pues que hasta antes conocíamos. Se me está yendo la palabra ahorita. Análoga, exacto, gracias. Y pues bueno, pues Japón participó con una gran apuesta para movilizar la televisión digital nacional a otro nivel. Y sin embargo, pues bueno, pues al final la presión de las compañías estadounidenses obligó a que esa transición digital que empezó en Tijuana se llevara a cabo con tecnologías estadounidenses. ¿Por qué es importante esto? Ahora que nos mencionaba el doctor Watanabe toda la estructura del Pacífico y del ASEAN, déjenme contarles que en materia de telecomunicaciones el Pacífico está perfectamente integrado y todas las compañías de telecomunicaciones funcionan perfectamente acopladas en toda esta zona del mundo. Los únicos pedazos que se están quedando fuera de este acoplamiento estructural en el que participan empresas japonesas como NTT Docomo, los países que se están quedando fuera de eso pues son precisamente los países de América del Norte. ¿Por qué nos quedamos fuera de ese acoplamiento estructural para las telecomunicaciones? Pues por ese momento de presión que hubo entre 2011 y 2016, que hizo que nosotros nos perdiéramos la oportunidad de estar conectados con un espacio más amplio. Esto es importante porque en el caso de México, como ya se los he comentado en otros lugares, nosotros tenemos alrededor de 60 millones de personas que no están conectadas a Internet y que no están, pero tenemos alrededor de 100 millones de usuarios de telefonía móvil. Es decir, tenemos a 30 millones de potenciales consumidores que ya tienen un teléfono móvil y que no están conectados a Internet, pero que ya prácticamente cuentan con la infraestructura. Entonces, eso está provocando pues, un momento de alta potencial en el terreno de lo que se nos mencionaba hace ratito, cuando se hablaba de TPP en términos de producción industrial. Telefonía móvil, telecomunicaciones, Internet, aplicaciones de Internet, videojuegos, etcétera, 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 tiene que ver con toda esta rama que el profesor Watanabe estaba mencionando en materia de producción. Por otro lado, como terreno de oportunidad tenemos, el doctor Watanabe mencionó la producción agrícola. En el caso de nosotros, resulta que Japón, uno de los grandes temas que están disputando ahorita en el TPP es el tema de la producción de carne de res. Y resulta que, bueno, pues aquí también otra anécdota que les quiero contar es que cuando estaba yo en Inglaterra, me dio mucho gusto ver que hubo una empresa mexicana que se puso a vender tacos congelados, tacos de res. Estaban, pues bueno, suficientemente buenos para un mexicano en Inglaterra. Pero la sorpresa fue que cuando conocí al empresario que hacía estos tacos, resulta que tenía que la carne de res que iba dentro de los tacos la tenía que comprar en Nueva Zelanda porque la carne de res mexicana no cumplía con los certificados de la Unión Europea. Entonces ahora, bueno, pues en ese momento perdimos una gran oportunidad con la Unión Europea y ahora que está creándose esta disputa en el TPP con la carne de res que se va a requerir en esta zona del mundo, pues yo espero que cuando eso pase, nosotros ya hayamos hecho nuestra parte de anticipación como ellos lo están haciendo y podamos incorporarnos a ese mercado sin problemas y no perdamos otra oportunidad como la que perdimos hace 10 años. Entonces, en materia de telecomunicaciones, pues, es importante mostrar que la alianza corporativa que representa el TPP nos da una muestra del gran potencial que hay del mercado mexicano y de la posibilidad de compatibilidad entre empresas mexicanas y japonesas. Quisiera hacer énfasis también en otra cosa que no se mencionó hoy, pero que me parece muy importante y que para la teoría de los sistemas es clave, que es cómo se ven estos números macro cuando los ponemos abajo. Y les voy a decir un pequeño detallito. En el caso de Japón y México tenemos 4 ciudades que son hermanas. Nagoya con la Ciudad de México, Kanagawa con Querétaro, Hiroshima con Guanajuato, Saitama con Toluca. Son ciudades hermanas que han creado un nuevo estilo de diplomacia que conocemos como diplomacia subnacional y que otro investigador también estudia aquí. Es tan importante el comercio entre ciudades que gran parte del esfuerzo que está haciendo la Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores va encaminada no a la diplomacia entre estados, sino a la diplomacia entre actores subnacionales, en este caso las ciudades. Y la Ciudad de México, como se imaginarán, pues es un actor importantísimo en este intercambio, como también lo es Querétaro, Guanajuato y otras ciudades del Bajío mexicano que están asociadas, por supuesto, a la industria automotriz. Entonces, cuando veo la pregunta del doctor sobre cómo construir un liderazgo compartido entre Japón y México, yo lo que veo son estas oportunidades que estoy mencionando aquí. telecomunicaciones, productos agrícolas y la vinculación entre actores emergentes subnacionales como son las ciudades y, por supuesto, las universidades, el CISAN. Estamos aquí, tenemos entre la UNAM y Japón varios convenios de colaboración y de intercambio. Y pues bueno, pues nosotros estamos muy contentos de que esta sea ahora también parte de los caminos que nos unan a Japón y México. Y bueno, le agradecemos mucho la reflexión del doctor Watanabe y espero que haya sido también de buena ayuda para los demás que estamos aquí. Muchas gracias.
Tenemos 15 minutos para que ustedes le hagan preguntas al doctor Watanabe. Quien quiera hacer una pregunta, además le pido que diga su nombre, su adscripción y que sea muy breve la pregunta para que haya más personas que puedan participar, porque él tiene una agenda su agenda está muy acotada y entonces tenemos que terminar a fuerzas a las 12:58. A ver, compañera.
Thanks a lot. Dr. Watanabe,
¿Tu nombre?
Diana Saavedra from Gaceta UNAM. I'd like to know to you what are the main areas of opportunities for Mexico to offer to Japan in a new agreement, far away from the automotive industries or the food services. I'd like to know what do you see in Mexico that we could offer. And para la doctora Maya y para el doctor Barrón, me gustaría saber su opinión sobre cómo está en este momento México construyendo este tipo de relaciones y acuerdos, porque pareciera que estamos esperando realmente nada más los caprichos de Estados Unidos antes que establecer un acuerdo más firme y ofrecer nuestros servicios como deberíamos estarlo haciendo. Gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is Francisco Valencia. I'm from Nomura Group. I'm really pleased to see you again, Dr. Watanabe. In this time of political and economic ambiguity in Mexico, I think from the private sector, the one that I cover in my job, we are trying to, as well as in the previous question, to find out which are the areas that should be to tackle down in order to increase and enhance this relationship we have with Japan, in order to take advantage of these three trade platforms that we have. I think from the Mexican perspective, we are in a very good position, but we are not taking enough advantage of what we already have. So if you have some recommendations, I will appreciate. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Vania de la Vega from the University Program on Asian and African Studies. Thank you for your presentation. I would like to know your opinion beyond the automotive and auto parts industry. If you see opportunities in the aerospace industry or, of course, in the electronics or even in newer industries like in the Internet of the Things and some others. Thank you.
La última.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Laura and I'm from Instituto Mora. My question is about this business environment you talk about during the negotiation of EPA with Mexico. I want to know more about this topic, please.
La última aquí con el compañero.
Hi, I'm Emilio from the Political Science School. My question is, what do you think about this precarization of the workforce in the agreement and the paper of the, how this can be reflected in the increase of the income in the undeveloped countries, mostly and all these countries who are part of the treatment, and the cheap workforce is like the comparative advantage, let's say.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. First, my thanks goes to Claudia and also Juan Carlos for the very valuable comments that you have made. Thank you very much. Already, those comments cover some of the questions like you raised. What are the areas or main areas where Japan and Mexico can further reinforce or enhance the bilateral cooperation beyond the traditional sort of discussions over auto and auto industries. Yes, certainly, yes. But at the same time, I have to, emphasize the importance of auto and auto industry and other industries because precisely, same reason why Japanese companies, made a lot of foreign direct investment in United Kingdom, or also same reason why they have done so here in Mexico. You see, so I think the business environment as such that you have raised here is very important to the interest of Japanese companies, including automotives. So they are very keenly interested in what you have, set up with the United States in the negotiation, which is certainly very difficult negotiation, very tough negotiation with the United States in view of, the improving or, the improving and also further reinforcing Mexicans' interest in the bilateral agreement or trilateral agreement with the United States. And I would think that Mexico negotiated very well with the United States. You see, you conceded some things, but overall, I think Japanese companies got the impression that the merits of being Mexico have been safeguarded thanks to Mexican government's negotiation with the United States. So I would think that this trend of increasing Japanese investment will not be, adversely affected by this. But the business people needs predictability for the future. Business people need accountability as well as transparency in the business conducts. So those things, I have to emphasize that are continuously important for the future of bilateral relations between Japan and Mexico. Having said that, I would very much, appreciative of, what Juan Carlos mentioned about sister cities and the possibility of expanding further sub-national diplomacy. That's one area where we could further proceed. Because, we have reached certain level of mutual confidence, thanks to past development and also thanks to this EPA, bilateral EPA that came into force some 14 years ago in 2005. So I think we have reached certain level of mutual confidence. So we have now, the Aeromexico coming in, and we have All Nippon Airways also coming in. So in terms of, the facilitating, the transportation, such as aero transportation, we have certain facilities. So I think, we should further enhance this kind of subnational diplomacy or people-to-people contacts, including university-to-university cooperations. So in that respect, this university has hosted this chancellors, university chancellors assembly, and quite a sizable number of Japanese universities. They send their presidents and rectors here, and that was a good, good sign that we could further enhance the kind of university to university academic exchange, and that will also positively affect the students' exchange as well. So those are the areas where we can further enhance people to people, and also the more services. We have certain level of a good exchange of goods, but we could perhaps further expand some services. I think we could increase more the Mexican service providers coming into Japan, and also the other way around, so that services and investment into services could be further enhanced using this bilateral EPA as well as TPP. And also, the agriculture processing and distribution system of processed agriculture products here in Mexico could be improved by the introduction of Japanese companies getting in establishing, the servicing of the distribution of those processed agriculture products. You have very good agriculture products together with Japanese idea and technologies of food processing put together. This could be, enormous chance for both sides. Vania-san also mentioned about electronic and IoT, and those are the areas where Japan could certainly, get into the more profound cooperation. Japan is very much interested in this, and maybe the e-commerce, electronic commerce, that is the area where both Japan and Mexico are now engaged in the WTO discussion of rule making in terms of e-commerce. And as a part of digital trade issues, we have the G20 meeting recently held in Osaka, and free flow of data with certain, confidence building measures to certify the very safe flow of data should be further enhanced. So that is the area where Japan and Mexico can certainly help. And in addition, also the WTO reform as such, Japan and Mexico should get together and further enhance the bilateral cooperation in that area. From the floor, I got also question about business environment, improvement of business environment, and that is a very unique character as a chapter incorporated into free trade agreement. You don't have this improvement of business environment chapter in the Mexico-EU FTA, nor in NAFTA. This is very unique in Japan-Mexico EPA. And this is to improve the business situation for both sides, both Japanese business community as well as Mexican business communities in Japan. And they get together at least once a year in terms of subcommittee to discuss what kind of difficulties either party being faced with, and whether the government side can help them or not. So this is very important. This is very unique. Why unique? Because not only government officials can participate in this subcommittee meetings, but also the business stakeholders. They can also join the meetings. And for instance, in case where the business environment subcommittee will be held here in Mexico, the Japanese business leaders belonging to Cámara Japonesa, located here in Mexico City, can also participate. And they can tell their counterparts, and also the Mexican government people, that very concrete issues, that difficulties that they are being faced with. So I think the chapter on improvement of business environment is very unique, and we should, make use of that. You see, so please, mindful of using this particular chapter for the improvement of the agreement between Japan and Mexico. Also, from the floor, I got the question about the foreign workers getting into Japan. From April this year, Japanese government has made a very clear sort of opening up of the labor market for foreigners. Because you see, we are being faced with this, the rapidly aging society. So we need labor coming from abroad. And not in a disorderly way, but in an orderly way. So there was a good example of Japanese EPA, particularly the one with Philippines and also Indonesia and Vietnam. Within the EPA, we have a chapter dealing with migration of labor. And first, we started with nursing and elderly care sector, because we are going to have a huge sort of cluster of people who now reach the age of 75 and beyond, and they increasingly need the elderly cares. And we are lacking the human resource for nursing and elderly care. So all those three EPAs have particular chapter to allow the nurses and care workers to get into Japan, namely from Indonesia, from the Philippines, and from Vietnam. And that kind of human resource, the opening up now taking place beyond what we have achieved in the EPAs. So particularly this nursing area and elderly care segments, people are more facilitated access to Japanese labor market, you see. So we have already the foreign lawyers, foreign accountants, much easier to get into Japanese, working place. So we are getting into the kind of new phase in that area. And actually, the legal system has been adopted since the beginning of this fiscal year 2019, which started April the 1st this year. So all these are my questions. Sorry, I couldn't cover everything, but I hope I was more or less corresponding to those questions so far raised. Thank you very much.
Pues puntualísimamente estamos terminando. A nombre del Programa Universitario de Estudios de Asia y África y del Centro de Investigaciones sobre América del Norte, agradecemos a la Embajada de Japón y al doctor Yorizumi Watanabe que hayan estado con nosotros esta mañana. Y gracias a ustedes, compañeras y compañeros, por haber venido a la conferencia.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Gracias. Juan Carlos, thank you very much.